Here is a number that should stop you cold. In 2026, there are more than 3,000 humanoid androids deployed in public-facing roles across China: reception desks, hospital wards, government service centers, retail floors. Thousands of real locations where real people walk in every single day and interact with these machines as part of their normal routine. The number of those people who realize they are talking to a robot? Researchers who have studied this estimate it at somewhere below 30%. 7 out of 10 people interacting with a machine designed to look and sound and move like a human being leave the interaction having noticed nothing, having felt nothing unusual, having filed the entire experience under a normal conversation with a normal person. Let that number settle for a second. 7 out of 10. Not in a controlled experiment where participants were primed to look for something unusual. In daily life, in the middle of a normal Tuesday, walking up to a desk, asking a question, getting an answer, and moving on without a single moment of doubt crossing their mind. Now ask yourself an honest question. Would you be in the 30% or would you be in the 7? Most people answer that question with complete confidence. Of course, I would notice. I would be able to tell. A robot is a robot. There are tells. There are always tells. By the time we get to the 5th robot on this list, that confidence is going to feel considerably less solid than it does right now. Today we are going through 5 female humanoid androids built in China that represent the current frontier of what physical human replication can achieve. Not the robots of science fiction, not the clunky mechanical humanoids you have seen demonstrated at technology conferences, machines with warm skin, breathing chests, eyes that hold moisture, faces running on dozens of simultaneous precision motors generating the sub-second emotional language that your brain reads constantly in the people around you without your conscious permission. We are going through all 5 of them. The engineering behind each one, the specific breakthroughs that make them work, the real environments where they are operating right now, and what the full picture of this technology tells us about a world that is changing faster and more quietly than most people realize. Before we get into it, hit the like button right now. The research that goes into videos like this is significant, and every like is a direct signal that tells us to keep producing them. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell. The most important developments we cover are often the ones that are not trending yet. You want to be there when they land. Let us go. Every number has a story behind it. The story behind that 30% figure starts not with a factory or a government program or a billion-dollar investment round. It starts with a question that a university research team in China decided to take seriously in 2016 when the rest of the robotics world was still treating it as a long-range theoretical problem. The question was not how to make a robot more intelligent. It was not about processing power or task completion or integration with existing systems. It was more specific than any of those things, and in some ways more fundamental. What would it actually require at the level of engineering and materials and design to produce a machine that the human nervous system does not immediately identify as a machine? Not a machine that passes a written test. Not a machine that sounds human over a phone line. A machine that, when you are standing in front of it in a physical space, produces the ambient social signals your brain uses to categorize what is in your environment. The signals that tell you below the level of conscious thought that you are in the presence of another person rather than in the presence of an object. The team at the University of Science and Technology of China built a robot called Jia Jia to pursue that question. She had a face modeled carefully on a young Chinese woman, textured in silicone that moved with her expressions rather than sitting over them like a fixed surface. She could hold an unscripted conversation, tracking the actual content and emotional register of what was said to her, and producing responses that fit the specific exchange rather than retrieving the nearest scripted match. Her eyes focused, her face shifted, register. None of that is what made her famous to millions of people across the world. What made her famous was 30 seconds from a single interview. A journalist conducting the exchange leaned in slightly closer than felt socially comfortable. Gia registered the proximity. Her expression shifted with a specific quality of mild social displeasure. And she said, without drama, without anything in her delivery that felt triggered or retrieved, please do not come so close when you are speaking to me. I feel uncomfortable. The pause that preceded the sentence is what people could not process. The expression that accompanied it, the tone, the complete absence of anything mechanical in the moment. It felt like a social boundary being set by someone who had one. It felt to the part of the brain that makes these assessments faster than conscious thought, like a person responding to another person. The footage spread to millions of people, and millions of people sent it to other people. What they were doing without necessarily articulating it was checking whether their reaction was personal or universal, whether what they had felt watching it was something that happened to them specifically or something that happened to human brains generally when presented with this specific input. The answer turned out to be human brains generally. Gia was never commercially produced. She was a proof of concept, a demonstration that the direction was real and the possibility was achievable. She was the moment the field stopped being theoretical. What she established was not a product, it was a trajectory. And the question that followed her was what that trajectory looked like when serious money and serious scale decided to follow it. The first major answer to that question came from a manufacturing facility in Dalian, unlike anything the robotics world had seen operating at commercial scale before. The company is called X Robots. Their facility runs simultaneously as a production factory and a public showroom, which is a very specific kind of confidence. You do not build a showroom next to your factory and invite the public to come and look closely unless you are not worried about what happens when they do. X Robots was founded around a principle that sounds almost irresponsibly narrow for a manufacturing operation. The goal was not the most capable android, not the most affordable, not the most conversationally sophisticated or the most widely deployable. The goal was the most physically real. The machine that, when a human being stood in front of it, produced the least cognitive resistance in the neural process that every human brain runs automatically and continuously to sort everything in its environment into the category of person and the category of everything else. Everything the company does follows from that single commitment. The skin is silicone, but silicone engineered to replicate what human skin actually looks like at conversational distance. The distance you are at when you approach a reception desk or a service counter or a hospital information point, at that distance, real skin has freckles that distribute in the specific, irregular way freckles distribute across a real face. It has the faint, visible suggestion of vascular structure at the wrist. It has texture variation between different regions of the face that your visual system processes below the level of deliberate attention because your visual system is not looking for it, it is just receiving it. All of that is present on the skin of an X Robots android. The hair is placed one strand at a time, each individual hair implanted individually the way hair actually grows from a human scalp, not applied in sections, not in units, one strand. Then the next. This process alone adds days to the production of each android, and the company has not moved away from it because the alternative is detectable at the distance these androids operate at, and detectable is the one outcome their entire operation is built to prevent. The eyes are the element that produces the most consistent reaction in people who encounter these androids in person for the first time. They hold moisture, not the dry flatness that gives away a prosthetic at close range. Not the overdone reflective gloss of a well-made animatronic surface. The specific wet depth of a living eye, the quality that makes a human eye catch light with the particular sense of something present behind the surface rather than a surface with nothing behind it. When you look at an X Robots android directly, the eyes that look back at you do not trigger the fraction of a second categorization that normally happens when you look at something artificial. The signal does not come back as machine. And then there is the detail that produces the strongest and most consistent reaction from people seeing these androids in person. The chest moves, It rises and falls in the quiet, slightly irregular rhythm of a person breathing at rest. Not mechanically, not in the even timed cadence of a device cycling through a sequence. In the specific, variably paced pattern of genuine respiration, the kind of breathing you register in a room not as a sound or a sight specifically, but as ambient evidence that a body is present. Your nervous system receives that information from one of these androids and does not flag it. It files it under the same category it files information from a person standing nearby. Each unit takes between 2 and 4 weeks to produce entirely by hand. Every android is custom built against a specific brief. High-end units reach prices of $275,000. They are not in display cases. They are in retail stores, medical facilities, and government reception contexts across China right now, being interacted with daily by people who have no particular reason to suspect that the person across the counter is not a person. And in the majority of cases, they do not suspect it. That 30% figure we started with, X-Robots, is a significant reason why it is that low. While that company was solving the problem for institutional clients with the budgets to match, a company in Beijing was working on the version of the same problem that nobody else in the space had chosen to prioritize. What does this look like when it is accessible? Not accessible in 5 years, not accessible in theory, accessible now to organizations and individuals operating with normal budgets and normal purchasing decisions. They launched a companion robot in late 2025 priced at approximately $1,380. That price generated international coverage not because of what the specific robot could do, but because of what the number implied about where the technology now sat. If you could purchase a humanoid companion robot with realistic social interaction capability for less than $1,500, every assumption about the timeline for this technology reaching ordinary life had just expired simultaneously. The product that established this company as a genuine force in the field came in May 2026, a bust format android built from the chest upward. And the reasoning behind that format reflects an understanding of human psychology that most robotics development had not yet centered in its engineering approach. Human connection in a one-on-one interaction does not live in the full body. It does not live in legs or hands or the movement of a person through space. It lives in the face during listening. In the continuous overlapping stream of micro adjustments across the forehead and around the eyes and at the corners of the mouth that tell the person speaking to you that something on the other side of the conversation is genuinely present with them. That stream of adjustments is what produces the experience of being heard, of mattering in an exchange, of a conversation having warmth rather than just information content. By directing every engineering resource toward making that specific experience as real as possible, this company produced something that changes the nature of an interaction in a way that more mechanically complete robots with resources divided across a full body system cannot. The result is a robot whose face responds continuously to the emotional content of what you are saying, whose attention reads as genuine rather than tracked, whose presence in a conversation produces the ambient signals your brain processes as engagement from another being. Models in their lineup sold out at their first public exhibition. The buyers were not technology enthusiasts. They were care facilities, businesses, and individuals looking for a quality of presence that a screen has never been able to provide, and that this robot, at a price point previously unimaginable for this technology, now could. What this company established is a principle that has significant implications for where this goes next. The face is not a feature among features in humanoid robotics. The face is the product. Engineer the face to a sufficient standard of realism, and you change every assumption about what an interaction with a machine can feel like. Everything else is secondary to that. The next robot on this list did not need a marketing strategy. She generated her own controversy. A video appeared online in late 2025. In it, a young woman sitting at a reception desk moved through a range of natural expressions during a conversation. The comments filled within hours, almost uniformly, with people insisting that what they were watching was a human being, an actor, a deepfake, a staged piece of content designed to generate exactly this kind of confusion. The company that built her released additional footage showing her internal structure, the engineering beneath the face, the mechanisms underneath the skin. That footage spread nearly as widely as the original because the story of the reaction had become as significant as the robot herself. Think about what that actually means. The company had to prove that their robot was a robot to a large and unconvinced public audience who had looked directly at footage of her and concluded with confidence that what they were seeing was a person. Her face runs on more than 30 precision motors operating simultaneously in real time, not producing a selection of preset expressions retrieved in response to specific inputs. Producing the continuous flowing, overlapping movement of a real human face during a real conversation. The element of human facial expression that has historically been impossible to replicate is not any individual expression. It is the movement between expressions, the transitions, the micro adjustments in the fraction of a second between what a face just did and what it is about to do. The sub-second emotional flickers that cross a face before a deliberate expression settles. The signals that human brains weight most heavily in assessing the authenticity of a social interaction. She produces all of them. Her eyes track with the quality of social attention rather than mechanical object detection. When you speak, they orient toward you with the specific quality of someone listening rather than a system scanning. When something moves at the edge of her visual field, she registers it with a brief, natural reorientation that reads as noticing rather than tracking. Her facial movement is continuously synchronized with her speech so that the relationship between expression and language has the timing of a real person. No lag, no reset between sentences, continuous flow. She is deployed as a receptionist across more than 200 real locations in China as of early 2026. Hotels, corporate offices, public buildings with thousands of daily visitors. When her units went to pre-order, demand immediately exceeded available supply and buyers placed deposits of approximately $450 to hold a position on the wait list. At a unit price between $25,000 and $30,000, organizations are prioritizing the purchase because the results of deploying her are measurable. She is a significant contributor to why that 30% recognition rate is as low as it is. In some deployment environments, the rate is lower still. Now we come to the robot that changed what the question of human replication actually means. In February 2026, a company called DroidUp walked onto a stage in Shanghai and introduced what they called the world's first fully biomimetic humanoid android. Biomimetic means built to replicate biology, not to approximate it visually, not to resemble it under casual observation, to replicate the physical signals that living biology produces at every level your senses operate at simultaneously. The skin temperature is 89 to 96 degrees Fahrenheit, the surface temperature range of a living human body. When you shake her hand, the information your skin receives in that moment does not register as object. It registers as person. Temperature is one of the most fundamental inputs your nervous system uses to categorize what it is in physical contact with, and it operates entirely below conscious awareness. You do not decide what temperature data tells you. It tells you directly and immediately. And what it tells you when you touch her is that you are touching something with the thermal signature of life. The breathing incorporates variations that go beyond a rising and falling chest. Real human respiration changes based on the demands of speech, on the shifts between listening and responding, on subtle postural adjustments. The rate varies slightly, the depth varies slightly. These variations are present in her breathing system, and they matter because they are the specific quality that distinguishes a breathing body from a mechanical cycle. A mechanical cycle is regular. A breathing body is almost regular. That almost is what your nervous system reads as life when it receives it as ambient background information. Her eyes hold gaze with the quality of social attention, and her pupils respond to light through a physical mechanism built into the structure of her eye system, rather than a simulated visual effect. Pupil response is one of the signals human brains monitor in other humans as evidence of attention and engagement. When someone's pupils respond to you in the way pupils respond to focus and interest, your brain registers that as presence, as someone being genuinely with you in an exchange rather than in the physical vicinity of one. Her face produces micro-expressions, the sub-second involuntary emotional flickers that cross a human face during conversation, the slight tension preceding uncertainty, the staged assembly of a smile from the corners outward, the fractional expression of surprise before the conscious response forms. These are the signals your brain monitors most continuously and most heavily in social interaction because they are the layer of communication that cannot be performed deliberately. They happen too fast for performance to govern them. She produces them in real time across the full range of human emotional states. She moves with deliberate imperfection. This is the detail that is more technically significant than it sounds. Every previous attempt to replicate human movement in a robotic system has failed at the same specific point. Machine movement is too smooth, too consistent, too precisely executed between fixed points. Real human movement is not smooth. It contains micro variations, brief weight shifts, the organic unpredictability of a body that is continuously balancing and orienting itself in real time rather than following a programmed path. Your visual system reads that organic variation as aliveness without your being able to specify what you are reading. Its absence is what has always given robotic movement away at the level of instinct, even when conscious analysis could not identify what was wrong. Her movement system incorporates the specific texture of human imperfection and the specific quality of organic variation that your visual system reads as a body rather than a mechanism. She launched in Shanghai at approximately $173,000. She is positioned for institutional and high-end commercial deployment, but her significance has nothing to do with price. She is the most complete answer to the question this field has been working toward since 2016. How close can you actually get based on what she demonstrates? The honest answer in 2026 is that the question of closeness has become insufficient. She does not get close. She arrives. The rest of the world has not been standing still, and the comparison illuminates something important. Sophia, built by Hanson Robotics, became the most culturally prominent humanoid robot in the world for years. She addressed international forums. Saudi Arabia granted her citizenship in 2017, the first robot in history to receive that designation. She is genuinely remarkable. But her face carries visible mechanics, and her expressions retain the quality of something manufactured. Your brain does not confuse her for a person. Ameca, from Engineered Arts in the United Kingdom, has facial movement that is genuinely fluid and has reached enormous audiences. She is clearly and deliberately robotic in appearance, designed to be compelling as a machine rather than to disappear as one. The comparison reveals a fundamental divergence in design philosophy. Western development has largely pursued transparent capability, a machine that is honest about being a machine but impressively able within that honest presentation. The Chinese companies we have looked at today have pursued the elimination of that transparency as a design goal. Not a machine that is clearly a machine but impressive, a machine that your brain does not register as a machine at all during the interaction. Neither direction is wrong. But in terms of the specific gap between what your senses tell you and what is actually in front of you, the distance between what China is producing and what the rest of the world currently offers is wide. Wide enough that it is the reason the recognition rate sits at 30% rather than 90%. Now, here is what that 30% figure actually means when you follow it out of the laboratory and into the world. Every robot we have looked at today is already deployed, not approaching deployment, not in final development, in actual buildings, doing actual jobs, interacting with actual people who in 7 out of 10 cases do not know what they are interacting with and do not figure it out. Healthcare facilities are using humanoid androids as social companions for elderly patients. Research in this context has produced findings that challenge fundamental assumptions about what connection requires. Patients form genuine emotional bonds with these companions. They report feeling less alone. They report feeling heard. In documented cases, they find the consistent available presence of an android easier to be around than the presence of human staff managing dozens of other patients simultaneously. What this tells us about the nature of connection, about whether connection requires a specific kind of source to be real, is a question the research raises without resolving. In hospitality and customer service, the dynamic is different, but the underlying mechanism is consistent. The adjustment people make when they know they are dealing with a machine, the reduced expectation, the different register, the absence of the warmth that makes a service interaction feel genuinely good rather than merely efficient, all of that disappears when the machine in front of them is producing the signals their nervous system reads as human presence. The interaction changes. The memory of the interaction changes. The 30% who notice something have a different experience from the 70% who do not. And the difference is not in what objectively happened, it is in what was perceived. That gap between objective reality and perceived reality is the question at the center of all of this. And it does not resolve neatly. When a machine can hold your gaze with the quality of attention, when it can read the emotional register of what you are saying and reflect something back that your brain processes as warmth and understanding, when it can make you feel in the moment of the interaction genuinely received and genuinely present with something, what does that do to our understanding of what those experiences are? Is the feeling of being understood by something that does not understand in the way a person understands the same experience as being understood? Does the mechanism behind a feeling change what the feeling is at the level of lived experience? If the feeling is real, is the source required to be real in the same sense? These are not questions with available answers in 2026. They are questions the technology has forced into daily life before the culture has had adequate time to develop considered positions on them. 7 out of 10 people are already living in those questions without knowing it, every time they interact with one of these androids as part of their normal day. What we can say is that the robots we looked at today are not the ceiling of this. The engineers who built them are already working on the next generation. More precision in the skin, more motors in the face, more sophistication in the movement variation, more of the seamlessness that lowers the recognition rate from 30% to 20% to 10% to whatever number comes after that. We are at the beginning of something. These 5 robots are the first chapter of a story that is going to run much longer than most people are currently accounting for. Go back to the question I asked you at the start. Would you be in the 30% or in the 7? Leave your honest answer in the comments. Not the answer you want to give, the honest one. And tell me what it was about watching this that made you more or less certain. Hit the like button if this gave you something to think about. Subscribe and turn on notifications because the next chapter of this story is already being built and we will be there when it emerges. See you in the next one.